All right, Bang. Today is Tuesday. It is February 13th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. Here with Chief as always. Chief, how are you today?
Ed?
Sick as fuck.
Yeah, I'm better than I was, but I was telling, I've basically been sick since last Thursday. Whatever I have, and I got a test to make sure it wasn't COVID, this thing is like 10 times worse than COVID. COVID's a little bitch compared to whatever I've had to deal with the last 4 days. So I'm returning to strength, but if my voice sounds weird, which I feel like it sounds weird in my ears, it's because of this sickness.
Yeah, you sound like shit, dude.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Right, Lance?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not normal Chief right now. Definitely
Well,
Chief with a frog in his throat.
Yeah. Well, just what are you pouring in there? You got a little
Body
electrolyte mix?
armor, yeah.
Yeah. All
Body
right.
armor, zero sugar electrolyte mix.
Okay, like that's the kind of stuff I need. I'm sitting here dehydrated, fighting something off. I need electrolytes.
I have one of these every day.
And you're hoarding them. I never.
They're all here. Go by the coffee machine.
Oh, okay.
They're
No,
great.
I'll have to do
tropical, This tropical, it's a flash IV. Tropical punch is very strong.
that. Okay, I might just load up my whole backpack
You
and
should.
yeah,
Because you got to get better because you have things to do.
I really do.
You have people to see. And doing that, you're going to use Game Time. If you want to go to a sports event, a concert, a show, it doesn't matter. Game Time is a place because you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. You wanted to make sure you get in and out seamlessly.
Brother, you're wearing that hat.
Yeah.
Do you know who's making his return next week? Is
Connor Bedard.
Our Lord and Savior Connor Bedard. So if you want to see him in person, there's plenty of opportunity between now and the end of the year. I think I was looking at the other day. They got probably like 16, 17 home games left, something like that. You're going to want to see Connor Bedard. You might want to see our friend Patrick Kane coming February 25th. So make sure you're getting on Game Time. It's the best place to get those last minute deals. That's how I do it. I look around maybe 5, 6 o'clock. Boom, Game Time's there for me. Get a good price, get in the door, have a great time.
Yeah, it's going to be a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Be a big one. Game Time's obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. They got great last minute deals. They got flash deals. They got zone deals. They got it all. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code DOGWALK for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code DOGWALK for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
I want to see you guys there February 25th. That's what I want. I want to see everybody using Game Time, seeing Bedard, seeing Patrick Kane. It's also Chris Chelios' jersey retirement night. So big night at the UC.
February 25th?
Yeah, big night.
Bad news.
Why?
You won't be there.
Why is that?
Because you will be in... you will be there. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll be back.
My apologies.
Yeah, okay.
I thought we were going to be in Arizona for spring training.
No. That's like the next... Because I think that's a Sunday night.
You're right. It
yeah,
is Sunday night.
Yeah.
All right, so...
Whew, scared me.
Yeah, today's topic,
Yeah, speaking of scary.
very scary.
Yeah.
Ecuador.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of bubbled up about a month ago.
It bubbled up a month ago because... And it's one of those things that you can't follow every story in the world. The world's on fucking fire right now. It feels like there's a crisis everywhere, including South America. But when you have masked gang members storm into a live broadcast, and it was not just like ABC, it was the state-run broadcasting company. So they're having a news feed. These gang guys come in, they shoot a cameraman in the leg and start making these different demands. Like that got people's attention. Like, wait a second, what the fuck is going on in Ecuador? And we had been kind of looking at it for a while as a topic to do, and we want to let some things kind of sift through, make sure we got the facts right. But I was stunned to see this because I had always thought of Ecuador as like this beacon of peace in South America, which is has a very chaotic history in almost every country. Chile with Pinochet and Argentina's, they're always boom and bust economically. Obviously, Colombia has their whole history with Pablo Escobar. Venezuela, they've been like an enemy of the United States, and we've done an episode on them before. That was years ago, where seemingly every country has had major issues. Ecuador never really did. Like, they were always known as like kind of this peaceful country that was fine. And one of my best friends from college did. I think he did a full year study abroad in Ecuador, and he would just talk about, oh yeah, the people are great. Is it safe? Oh, it's so safe. It's beautiful, mountainous, but then there's ocean, the Pacific Ocean's there. He's like, it was like his favorite place in the world. And this was obviously when I was in college. So this is, I think he went in like 2007 to see where it's gone from then until now, which is maybe the most dangerous country in the world that's not actively at war, like not, Israel, Gaza, or Ukraine situation. But it is become one of the most dangerous places in the world. And so it's like, how did that happen? And that's what we got to discuss today.
Yeah, I've been interested in this because I think it was our old buddy Jeff Nadut to do. He reached out to me probably a month ago. It's like, hey, this shit's crazy. You should look into it. If you want me to come on, let me know. But it's definitely been on my radar. So I'm kind of interested to hear what's going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, you think about, this is all about cocaine, right? This is about cocaine. They say they have more murders in 2023 than any year in the history of Ecuador. Like I said, it's always been a relatively safe, peaceful country. Highest ever murders. They say 80% of the murders are linked to the cocaine trade. And Ecuador's northern border is with Colombia. So Colombia, they are known as like the cocaine capital of the world. If you've watched Narcos, if you've watched anything related to the drug trade in pop culture for the last 40 years, you know that cocaine is coming out of Colombia. Okay, and a large part of that, especially since the 90s, was because of this kind of internal strife inside of Colombia, where Colombia effectively has had this group of rebels called FARC for 50 years. And FARC, they're a political group first and foremost, but they became like guerrilla warriors that would live out in the jungle in these rural areas, and they felt like they were being oppressed by both major political parties. It's almost like, but they're communist leaning. So going back to like the era of like Che Guevara and the Cuban Revolution, where communism was really kind of taking hold in Latin America as an idea and a movement. Well, these people felt like they were not being represented by the two-party system that existed in Colombia. So they're basically like, fuck you guys. Like, we're going to do our own thing. We're separate of you. We're going to be out here and we're going to be, communist leaning. So they had been at war with the Colombian government for 40 years. Like, they're armed. They kidnap people. And then after Pablo Escobar kind of lost his stranglehold on the cocaine trade, they really got into it. So you had other cartels in Colombia were kind of filled that vacuum. But FARC, this armed militia group, this rebel group, that was really how they funded all their weapons, all their everything. And then, but they were not, like, that was not their primary thing. Like, you look at the Mexican drug cartels and you look at all these other cartels, it's all about drugs. Their thing was always like, we want to be represented in our government, and we don't feel like we're being heard. And they use drugs to kind of fund their political movement. Well, 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, I think it was 2016, after like 40, 50 years, they finally reached a peace agreement with the Colombian government. And one of the stipulations of that peace agreement is that they're going to lay down their arms, and they got out of the drug trade. Okay. So that created a vacuum and an opportunity in the drug trade coming out of Colombia, because the DEA and the Colombian government were cracking down, and now FARC was out. So the Mexican cartels and other international cartels were like, well, we need to have like a better resource, or better way to get drugs and money out of Colombia, because now it's like very difficult to do business if you're a drug cartel in Colombia. So like, well, where can we go? Let's just go next door, and we're gonna go to Ecuador. And it was like kind of almost like a perfect storm of things that led to this explosion in gang violence. And one of them was they elected this prime minister, president, in 2007, and he had a pretty fervent anti-American streak, where you call, like, these are imperialists and blah, blah, blah. And I don't, we had a military base in Ecuador. I don't know why the fuck we would need a military base in Ecuador, but we had one. And this guy got elected, came in, shut it down. And so nobody was really mining the store there. Like we weren't there. It was like more of like a naval base, like in a major port city in Ecuador. So once we were out of Ecuador, well, then it became a lot easier to move cocaine out of there. And the fact that Ecuador had always been so peaceful, relatively low crime, especially compared to Colombia and Venezuela and these other places, that history of peace ultimately fucked them in a way because they had no infrastructure. Okay. They had poor prison systems. They had no real like drug fighting agencies. They had smaller police forces, smaller military, all these things where, like a country that has been like Colombia, who has been at war with the drug cartels forever, they have like the weapons, they have the communication systems, the undercover agents, all these things that are dedicated to fighting this for years. Ecuador never needed that. They never needed it, so they never had it. And it was like they went from having like very little cocaine trafficking to in 2021 they did over 1 billion. And it was like so in that time period, so it's like, how do you fund, if you're this kind of, they're still a poor country, how do you keep up with and fund and do all these things to combat these drug cartels if you've never had to do it before? So that really, there was no power vacuum, there's no security, there was just like it was like almost like the Wild West. And the drug cartels and these gangs just took over, and it has spiraled completely out of control to the point now that president I mentioned before, he left office in 2017. They've had 2 presidents since then. The most recent one, a month ago, he described, and I think there's like a legal stipulation here. He goes, this is not organized crime. He's like, I want to make that clear. Like these gang leaders are not, this is not an organized crime thing. They are terrorists. And they really are. Like the way that they're behaving is fucking insanity. So some of the things, so we talked about that. They stormed the news broadcast of the state government. They assassinated a presidential candidate. They blew up a bridge. They have blown up shops. They do like indiscriminate kind of shooting down there. They are literally terrorizing people. There's still a curfew in place in Ecuador that you cannot be on the streets between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. And they went through a period not that long ago where it was like schools are shut down for safety purposes. And it was basically sounded like a COVID term, but it's like, if you're a non-essential worker, like we want you to stay home. Like that's how much violence there was in the streets, because you have all these rival factions. And the same thing is where the security apparatus to combat it is so, such a new thing in Ecuador. These gangs with all the money and infrastructure, that's new too. So they're all just like, there's more money than ever, and everyone's just trying to get as much as they can as quickly as they can. And there's like, almost like a no honor among thieves kind of thing. So the gangs are all fighting each other. They're also fighting the government. And, and you have these heavily influences coming, from Mexico that are partaking in this. And it's really spiraled. I said they blew up the bridge. They're going after schools, shops, all these different things. They also, they raided a hospital, okay, to get one of their gang members out, where they arrested all these people. You see all these people kind of like stripped down on the street, handcuffed, laying on their stomachs with their hands behind their back. It was because they were like going in and shooting up a hospital because a guy had been like wounded in prison, because they had 300 murders in prison last year, because the actual like transactions and decisions that are being made about the Ecuador drug trade all happens in the prisons. So they arrest these people, okay, from different gangs and different cartels. They arrest them, but there's so much money to be had that they either get broken out, they get, by inside, prison guards, things like that, or they just basically like, your cell is your office. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You can't leave, but you're running this entire global cocaine trade out of this federal prison in Quito, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. So they've tried these different things where they're going to move, we're going to move them from a different security type prison, maximum security. We're going to have these guys, trying to not to mix the populations too much, but everything's changing. And then you just have, in the last month, you have these like insane riots that go on in the prisons where they're like lighting the prisons on fire and people are breaking out and people are getting murdered and beaten to death. It is like, it looks like an apocalyptic type of place, like the worst place on earth to be, where nobody's safe. Like, don't go to school. It's not safe. Like, that's how bad it is. And then, even up to, like I said before, assassinating a presidential candidate over, his threats to impede their business. And the other thing about this that makes Ecuador so, like they were almost like ripe for this perfect country to be involved in this, is that they already had like the trade routes and the shipping routes established, because what's one of their biggest exports? Bananas. So they have all these bananas, and you'll have these crates and crates and crates of bananas. Well, also in those bananas is a bunch of cocaine. So they actually so you open up this thing, you think it's bananas, and there will be bananas in there, but underneath it is just kilos and kilos of cocaine. And they actually, I was like, oh, Ecuador right there, they probably ship it up to Mexico, get it over the border somehow, blah, blah, blah. 70% of their cocaine goes to Europe, which is, that was a kind of a curveball to me, but they're the ones bringing most of the cocaine, or I don't know about most of their cocaine goes to Europe, but Europe, I don't know, we don't really focus on it, I feel like, because we're here, but they have like the same insatiable appetite for cocaine in Europe, in Western Europe, that we have here, and they got to get it from somewhere, and basically all the cocaine comes out of South America, and right now it's coming out of Quito in Ecuador. Like that's where it's going, but it is an unbelievable, untenable, like I don't know how you wrestle it under control. So the president has said, we're going to fight these people until they're eliminated. So you effectively have a civil war going on for power. And we've seen this play out in Colombia in the 80s and the early 90s, where Pablo Escobar got elected to office. Okay. So like no one would, like it was really us. It was the DEA and the United States government that took down Pablo Escobar. He probably, without us getting involved, probably would have been elected president of that country, like legitimately. Have you ever seen Narcos?
I haven't. It's been on the list, but
the first season of Narcos is pretty good. I don't know if it's still going or not.
No, I think it's over.
Is it over?
Like Narcos Mexico or something?
I mean, you could theoretically do it forever. There's going to be drug-related content forever. Yeah. So the season 2 is like the Cali cartel, which kind of took over in large part for Escobar after Escobar got killed, and then there was like a Mexican Narcos when they became bigger and stronger. But it is like it's almost like this is a moment for Ecuador. Like, are you going to be what you were, what your identity is? And the president who's in power now, who's making all these, like, we're going to eradicate these people, all this harsh language and harsh actions too against the cartels. Is Ecuador going to be what it was for basically its entire existence, which is this mostly safe, beautiful country on the Pacific Ocean in South America? Or is it going to be another narco state like Colombia? And it's like, that's the fight that's really going on right now. What kind of future is Colombia or is Ecuador going to have? And it feels like we're at like the crossroads of it right now. And it could, like they've assassinated a presidential candidate before. Like who's to say they can't go get this guy too? Mm-hmm. Like it's a very, very bad situation. And you would almost assume that the gangs have the money, right? Like they probably have more money at their disposal to buy arms and hideaways and buy off people than the actual Ecuador government, because they're not a very wealthy country. So it'll be very, I'm like fascinated to see how it turns out, because it would be a tragedy if you had another one of these South American countries just go where it's just absolute lawlessness and like the worst people in the world are the ones who are actually in charge. So, yeah,
very much would be.
Yeah, where and it's just like no shame. Like they'll kill children, they'll blow up school. Like there's no.
I just don't know how it gets to that point.
I've always wondered that.
Yeah.
I've always wondered that, and I'm going to get his name wrong, but the South America was always a Spanish. Other than Brazil, the rest of the continent was Spanish colonies, and they had this guy Bolivar, who in the early 1800s was kind of like their George Washington or Thomas Jefferson, or maybe both all wrapped up into one, where I think he was educated in England or Spain, like educated in Europe, well-to-do family, was inspired by what he saw, the American independence, and it was like, we should not be, paying tribute to Spain. The same thing, right? Like, we're going to break away. We're going to do our own thing. And this guy, his name is Bolivar, and I think that's where Bolivia is named after him. But they led this revolution, and he got all these. Originally it was like almost one big country, like from Colombia, Panama, Venezuela, all those places were all kind of one country. And it was like they were setting up a democracy. They were setting, trying to really kind of mirror what happened in the United States. And it never came to fruition. Like, it's just, they've, and you can blame some of that on, our involvement, and, because we've had, like the United Fruit Company and all these different places, sugar companies that have really kind of fucked with their economy and their people, and CIA with Chile and Argentina and all these different things. Like, there's been like we haven't helped that situation, we'll say. But it's like, it feels like there's got to be something fundamentally different as to why these countries seemingly can so easily descend into utter chaos. Mm-hmm. Like, Venezuela is a great example. They have every resource you could ever want. They're sitting on an ocean of oil. They're in the tropics. It would be great tourism. They're in the jungle. They can, they got all sorts of things, resources that should make that country. They should be as rich as Saudi Arabia. They're not. Why is that? And I wish someone would do like a comprehensive study documentary on that, because there's no obvious reason, but it does feel like there's less respect for the rule of law in those countries than we have here in general. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why that is.
It's got to be in some level tied to poverty, right?
Yeah, but we've had poverty here.
Yeah, but I think like the things you always see is that the law enforcement is always getting paid off. Like, right? Like, that's a huge. It feels
like there's always a cap to that in America. Like, mm-hmm. We've always had the mafia here. We've always had underhanded, shady things going on. Always. Mm-hmm. Since the beginning. But it's like, it gets to a level and it's like, you know what? We're going to have to come after you on that. Like, you've pushed it too far. Mm-hmm. Like, where the United States government will, like, we have a DEA and we have an FBI and we have these different, different police departments that will crack down on organized crime and crack down on gangs. And they probably have made plenty of mistakes doing that. But it feels like, I don't think, now the CIA has been involved in the drug trade in the United States before too. We've talked about that on a show. But it doesn't feel like the federal government could be toppled by a drug cartel in the United States. Like, that seems impossible to me. It's very possible. All from the Texas border south. Mm-hmm. That has happened in many places. And it's like it's like one of those things where it's like, and I think about this with, like, even on a smaller scale in a different topic about different cities too. Where it's like, at one point, Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, there are all these booming cities in the 30s, 40s, 50s into the 60s. And every other Midwestern city has kind of died except for Chicago. Like, Detroit used to have 2.5 million people. Now they're down to like 600,000. Like, that's insane. Mm-hmm. That is insane. I know it's a lot with the auto industry and globalization or whatever, but like, you also never it's probably 70 years of bad policy decision, and you never recruited like other businesses. Like I don't think Chicago being on a lake in the Midwest is at any sort of like geographical advantage. Maybe it's the furthest west, but like it doesn't seem like there should be any geographical trade advantage that Chicago has that Detroit doesn't.
Yeah, man. If anything, I mean, this is stupid, but they're on the Eastern time zone. You'd think it'd be easier.
It's a little closer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's like you can make an argument where it's like, all right, ship it to Detroit, and, and then they can get it to, the Mid-Atlantic more easily than Chicago could, or something. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But it's like they were all in on auto, and that was great for a while, and then they had bad policy, and some global factors change, and all of a sudden, like the city it's sad. It's dead and sad, and then it has a little resurgence, maybe 10 years ago, and now it feels like it's...
I believe it's coming back, from what I understand.
I feel like it's... I had heard that it was on the upswing.
And then COVID.
And then COVID really kind of pushed it back down. Mm-hmm. So, but it's just like, how, and it's... But I also kind of think if a place can die... It can be reborn too, but it's like you need the right leaders, the right policy, the right economics
to give the fucking residents something to be excited about.
Yeah, and a reason to live there. I have often said that I think Michigan should be like the #1 state in the country. Right in the middle, beautiful lakes. They have great agriculture, wine, apples, all these different fruit, orchards. Climate's not as bad. Because the lake kind of warms things up. They get a little bit more snow on that western side, so they get more snow, but it's like beautiful. It's like pure Michigan. Like Michigan objectively is a prettier state than Illinois, but Chicago kills Detroit as a city. Like it's not even comparable anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's like it is like like a tale of two cities. Like I want like a documentary. It's like a tale of two cities, Detroit versus Chicago, and like what.
Well, honestly, the bodies of water, it is such a huge part, I think, too.
Yeah, because they're very similar.
Yeah.
They're both these like former great, Chicago's still a great city, but these cities on a lake in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And I do think Detroit, where it's like, hey, like you can make your, whatever you're manufacturing, you can make it outside Detroit and you can ship it all over the Eastern Seaboard for cheaper than you could in the in Chicago or Wisconsin, so why did they only do auto as like, which was a great thing while it was great? Why did they only do that? Why did they never diversify their economy in a real way in Detroit? And what exact policy decisions led them to where they are now?
I'll say this, just being a Chicagoan, whoever's idea it was, whoever had the engineering to reverse the Chicago River was
genius.
Maybe one of the most important things ever to this city.
Probably, honestly, yeah. And that was a long time ago.
Yeah, people that don't know, Chicago River used to dump right into Lake Michigan.
Yeah, so you would have all the pollution from all these different manufacturing sites in and around the Chicago River would flow into the lake, and then made the lake like unusable. So then they dredged it out and reversed the flow, which. That's one of those things that it's like, what do you mean you reverse the flow of a river? It's been flowing that way
since the beginning of time.
Literally. Yeah. Since the Ice Age.
So Lake Michigan, where fucking playpen and everything goes
beautiful.
out with their boats, is beautiful, where it used to be a shit haven.
Right.
And now we just flow it down
the other way. We flow the shit the other way. Don't go in the river.
Towards St. Louis.
Yeah. Right.
Like that's what happens.
It's crazy. It is crazy how they're able to do that.
And then on top of that, it used to flood a lot. And it also was so gross. I mean, it's not, don't get me wrong, you don't want to be swimming in it now.
In Lake Michigan?
No.
The
Chicago
river. Yeah.
But it was like the elite, nobody wanted to be close to it.
Yeah.
Like, I saw a video or like a doc once where it was like, oh, no, get me away from the river. Now it's like everybody wants to be on that river.
Yeah. Because I think they have cleaned it up a little bit.
Yeah, and they made the river walk and
yeah,
it's
cool. And then like a lot of different branches, like even up into Lincoln Park, there's like nicer river walks up there now too. Like I think the north branch of the river, and yeah, so it is the other fact I love if we're talking Chicago construction turn of the century, where Michigan Avenue used to be the beachfront, and they took all the debris from the Chicago fire, and dumped it in the lake, and there was so much that's what really created everything out to Lakeshore Drive. Did you know that?
No.
Isn't that fascinating?
No.
Yeah. So and they're like, what the fuck do we do with this whole city that burnt down? Throw it in the lake. So they just threw it in the lake, piled it up, and they created like more landmass to be able to build on.
That's fucking absurd.
Yeah. So when they build the buildings, they still go down to the bedrock because it's not stable enough to like, you know, to hold these massive things. Still go down to the bedrock. But like initially, like Lakeshore Drive, that should not be there. Like that's only there because of the Chicago fire.
I did not know that.
Yeah. It's a little fun
That
history
is a good
fact.
fun fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we could keep going. Chicago can't flood. There's a lot of things. You know that?
I don't think I know that.
Yeah, you should watch a video on Chicago's flooding system.
Okay. And they just have great drainage to get it out of there?
Like it's damn near impossible for Chicago to flood.
Why don't we do anything cool anymore? Dante did a blog about this. This is a very Dante blog, but I agree with him. I hate how much I agree with him on certain things. But like we don't build things that are, it feels like we don't build anything cool or beautiful anymore. You know, there's like those churches and there's a church in Spain they've been building for like 600 years. And everyone just keeps doing it. That's not done. They've been still building it. And like we build these massive skyscrapers, which are cool, but they serve no purpose because nobody lives in them. And there's no, like, commercial real estate's dying, but there's more buildings going up all the time. It's just like a fucking tax haven and a write-off. And it's like, why don't we like invest in something better, like something cooler, something better? Like we did the highway system in the 50s, but we haven't done anything like any massive project like that, infrastructure project like that in a long time. Like the highway system, I
Pretty
think
crazy to think about.
it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's so massive.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine trying to get that through government today?
No. Well, it's high-speed rail. That's kind of what,
Yeah.
in a sense. I mean, a lot of that would be opening old railways. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure.
I love the idea of high-speed rail. I don't know enough. I feel like I watch something on it like once or twice a year. I get my and I love throwing up that image, that map on Twitter because it's like cheat code for engagement. But because the fellas love the idea of high-speed rail. Guys will talk about that all day long. But like there's just like a highway that will connect you to literally anywhere in the entire country. Like you can go from like, you know, bumfuck Kansas to Bangor, Maine and just drive. Like, or, you know, California, Oregon, whatever. Like
Pretty amazing.
It is amazing.
And like, of course, they had to knock a lot of shit down for that to happen.
Yeah, but I'd say it was worth it. It was an economic boom. I mean, you'd have to, like all the shipping and trucking that happens, that is possible because of the highway system.
I mean, it's like the worst going to a place that is not connected to a highway.
Where is that?
Yeah. Like
you can get anywhere. Like,
but there's like exceptions. Like have you ever been to, I think Macomb, am I right?
Western Illinois?
Yeah, like it's not as easy.
Yeah, but it's not probably that far from I-80, you know, like.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I know like going from Southern to Western was always a bear because there was no good highway to get there. So when we would travel there for football or like visiting a friend, it was always tough. Yeah. You know, but going to, you know, ISU or.
You might have to go a little bit north to go a little bit west or something like, you know, or a little bit east, go a little bit west, pick up the highway. But like, there is a highway that will take you there. Like, they're just.
Yeah, then I wonder if there was because we'd always take the back roads.
Because it's probably more of a straight line.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there's something like it. Because how far is Macomb from 80 or one of those?
I don't know. I've only been there twice.
Yeah. But again, you're right though. Like Macomb is like in the middle of fucking nowhere. Like really like, I don't know. Have you ever done like a cross country road trip before? We did one when I was a family, and our other family friends. We did an RV trip. Yeah. They drove out from New England, met us in St. Charles, and then we went from St. Charles to our first stop was the Badlands. And so Badlands, we saw Mount Rushmore, like the whole western United States down the Grand Canyon and zipped home. But it's like you were just on the highways the whole time going all these very remote places that we were going to, like getting to Yellowstone and places like that. Like everything is just connected to a highway. It's like an amazing, amazing achievement that I feel like should be talked about more. And it could be like, I don't know, I feel like it should be like inspirational in a way. Like we did that. Like our country with less technology than we have now was able to build that.
I mean, I'm sure there's definitely things we just take them for granted and we don't.
You think so?
Yeah, we don't really like know about it.
Maybe. I mean, the internet's pretty amazing.
Well, and exactly. We're speaking more in infrastructure wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. Like you could technically get on 55 from Carbondale, and but then once you get to Springfield, you start to zag a little east.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
It's a little harder.
Yeah.
To get from Carbondale to Macomb.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that's like the number one example I know of. Or
but
even,
you could. But in reality, though, you could take highways to get you pretty much there.
Yeah, even from Chicago, there's not like a great direct route. Well, you take like, I don't know. Some Macomb person's gonna have to tell me the best route from Chicago.
I'm sure we have some out there.
Oh yeah, shout out Susan.
Yeah, I don't know how we went down this path, but yeah, Ecuador seems fucked.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
All right then. That's it, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We will be back tomorrow with a free swim. We'll see you then.